Welcome, students. My name is Mr. Little, and today we're going to be doing an SAQ, short answer question, review for AP Social Studies classes. So whether you're in AP Euro, AP World, AP US, this review is for you. In these SAQ reviews, we're going to be using something called the ACE method to answer the SAQ. Now, if you are familiar with the ACE method, if your teacher uses it, great, awesome. If you are not familiar with the ACE method, please pause this video and go ahead and read this handy chart I put here, explaining how the ACE method works. Whether you've just heard about it or this is something you're familiar with, that's okay, because we're going to ace the SAQ. So before we get to the actual review itself, I want to quick go over the two purposes of this review. Purpose number one, to practice writing a short answer question using publicly available released College Board SAQs, all of which are going to be linked in the description below. Second thing, to review content via a broad overview. The great thing about SAQs is they tend to touch on big course themes or big course topics. And so by going through these questions, by thinking them through and brainstorming possible answers to them, it gives us an opportunity to do a little bit of content review. All right, so for this SAQ, we have a no stimulus SAQ, just means just the questions. We're going to pull the knowledge from our heads. This one seems to correspond with Unit 5 as well as Unit 6. This question seems to be asking about new elites based on changes as well as continuities in the period 1750 to 1900. We have an identify question followed by two explain questions. So let's get to it. So some of my first impressions are that this question uses the word elites a lot, and elites generally broadly just means those in charge. So it's being very broad and just asking about people in charge and how they changed and didn't change. And so even though it doesn't use the term change and continuity, this SAQ seems to be asking about change and continuity, especially B and C is asking about change and continuity. Now it talks about economic change in B, and that's probably focusing on industrialization as well as imperialism. But that could also be talking about the age of revolution. Some revolutions were based primarily on economic reasons, such as the Latin American revolutions. I also noticed that it's not limited to Europe. Again, this is a global SAQ, and so although we tend to associate elites for some reason, it tends in my mind at least to jump to Europe. This isn't limited to Europe. We could discuss other parts of the world. And it talks about new ideologies in part C, and I think that's just a really fancy word for new ideas. Now, it also doesn't say these ideas had to be put into effect. It just said that they became popular, right? So it's not limited to politics either. We could be talking about any kind of ideology, any kind of set of ideas. Pause this video and take about 3 minutes and see if you can brainstorm some answers. It's always critical when you're doing a writing assessment to take at least some time to do just a little bit of brainstorming before you start writing. Remember, plan more, write less. So after a little bit of brainstorming, here are some possible responses to each of these parts of the SAQ. So for example, in the identify an economic change that could lead to the formation of new elites, there's industrialization, which definitely led to a new economic elite that sometimes in socialist discourse is referred to as the bourgeoisie, or we might call the middle class or managerial class. Also, imperialism might have led to new colonial elites within imperial empires, whether those were native individuals who rose through the ranks of imperial administration, or those were Europeans who migrated to those empires. There was definitely some new elites within empires. Independence, especially in Latin America, allowed the criollos or the Creoles to gain new status they previously had not had under Spanish rule because of the peninsulares who had dominated those administrative or economically powerful positions. So those are some possible answers to that one. In terms of economic changes that traditional elites managed to weather, off the top of my head, I can think of a few European examples, such as Russian boyars who remained powerful even after serfdom was ended in Russia, as well as German Junkers who managed to maintain a powerful hold on the German economy and political system throughout the German Empire, even though their wheat growing enterprises in what is now Eastern Germany were no longer profitable. But I can't really explain those very well without getting really technical. So more I'm thinking about like princes in South Asia under British rule and in East India Company rule. In terms of new ideas, I'm thinking of, there's quite a few. You could talk about socialism and communism as a response to economic elites. You could talk about nationalism, really any anti-imperial movement as a response to imperial elites. You could also talk about social Darwinism as part of the formation of new elites within Europe. You could also talk about feminism, which in some cases saw female elites taking a role in promoting women's emancipation or further rights for women during the Industrial Revolution. All right, now you are going to attempt to write an SAQ. So pause this video, go set a timer for 15 minutes, and then come on back, and you can compare what you wrote to the ACE answers that I'm going to provide. Now, I want to be really clear here that there are many different ways to answer this SAQ. And so if you didn't write the exact same thing that I wrote, that's okay. That's not a big deal. All right, so here are my 3 answers to this particular SAQ. I use the ACE method, and you can see the color coding in the left-hand corner. So for the identify question, one change that led to the creation of new elites would be the Industrial Revolution. Since that is an identify question, that's all I got to say. We're done with that. In terms of an elite that weathered any sort of economic change, I decided to talk about Indian princes under both the East India Company and the British Raj. So I start by talking about how during the decline of the Mughal Empire, local princes across South Asia asserted their autonomy in the face of declining Mughal power. And even though, as we know, South Asia was slowly coming under the influence of the East India Company and its private military, many local rulers managed to negotiate retaining their local power as long as they pay taxes, pay tribute, or allow the East India Company to monopolize certain trade sectors or local goods. In this way, some local princes in South Asia managed to maintain their power in a changing political and economic environment. That's not to say, by the way, that all princes did that. There were a number of cases of princes resisting the East India Company as it slowly asserted its dominance over South Asia. And one way in which new elites led to new ideologies would be social Darwinism in industrial Europe. That's what I decided to focus on. Now, this one's a little tricky because social Darwinism actually has a lot of origins, and to say that it's only from the new elites that came out of the Industrial Revolution would not necessarily be correct. So I've said that it is contributed to the new ideology, and that is that previously kings, monarchs, royalty had all claimed either divine right or some kind of royal descent to justify their authority. However, with the Industrial Revolution, the rise of a manager class and a middle class, they needed some other reason to justify their wealth or economic authority, and so they turned to this idea of social Darwinism and how they were culturally superior because they had industrialized first before any other nation in the world, ignoring, of course, the many proto-industrial movements that had existed worldwide. And so again, this is how new elites contributed to the emergence of new ideologies such as social Darwinism. Alrighty, and that is a wrap for this particular SAQ review, but I'm going to encourage you to take some time, go back perhaps, and try writing a different answer using a different one of those ideas we brainstormed as possible answers. And take the ACE method, go practice with another SAQ. Keep practicing, keep reviewing. Thanks for joining me. I'm Mr. Little, and I'll see you next time.